My name is Dora, and I am 54 years old. The most expensive lesson of my life was not learned in a boardroom or from a failed investment. It was taught to me by a 27-year-old woman in a $75,000 wedding gown on the steps of the Crystal Waters estate. I had come to give my only son a gift that would secure his future, a secret I had carried for years. But by the time the string quartet played the first note of the processional, that gift was gone. And so was I. Before we get into how a mother's heart can break and mend itself in the span of a single afternoon, I would love to know, where in the world are you listening from today? If stories about family resilience and quiet strength mean something to you, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow, and it lets me know you are here with me. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to a phone call 8 months before that wedding day. That phone call was from my son Landon. His voice was all sunshine and bubbles, the way it got when he was truly deeply happy. "Mom," he said, "I have met the one. Her name is Elena. I want you to meet her this weekend." My heart did that funny little squeeze, the one that is equal parts joy and sudden sharp loneliness. That is the deal when you are a single parent. You raise them to leave you. You hope for it even. But when it happens, the space they occupied feels so vast and quiet. I remember hanging up the phone and just standing in my kitchen, my hand on the cool granite countertop I saved for 3 years to install. I looked out the window at my small, well-tended garden, and I wondered what this Eleanor would think of my hydrangeas of the bird feeder, made from a recycled teapot. It was a silly thought, but it was the first of many small anxieties that would begin to gather like clouds. I had Landon young. His father, Michael, was gone before Landon turned 3, a heart attack that left me with a 2-year-old, a mortgage on a modest bungalow, and a determination so fierce it scared me sometimes. I worked as a paralegal by day, my back aching from hours over case files, and took bookkeeping classes at night at the community college. I remember the smell of the classroom of old chalk and industrial cleaner and the weight of the textbooks in my arms as I walked to my car in the dark. I clipped coupons until my fingers were stained with newsprint. I learned about mutual funds and compound interest, my notes filled in the margins of Landon's preschool drawings. It was not glamorous, but it was honest. And I built something, a life. A home that was always warm and clean, even if the furniture was second-hand. A son who was kind and smart, and who became an architect for heaven's sake. I was so proud, I thought my chest would burst sometimes. He got his first full-time job, and took me out to a nice dinner, and he paid. He handed the waiter his credit card, and I had to look down at my napkin so he would not see my tears. The first time I met Elena, I understood the sunshine in Landon's voice. She was stunning. Long dark hair that looked like it had never been touched by humidity, eyes the color of expensive coffee, a smile that was perfectly calibrated, showing just the right amount of very white teeth. She was a social media strategist for high-end lifestyle brands. She shook my hand, her grip cool and firm. "A pleasure, Dora," she said. "Landon talks about you so much." She said my name with a slight inflection, as if it were a simple plain word she was not quite used to saying. She brought a bottle of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. She held it out, her French manicure gleaming. "I hope this is all right. I was not sure what you would prefer." It was a statement, not a question. She complimented my home, calling it cozy and so full of character. It was a nice way of saying small and old. We sat in my living room, the one with the sofa I had reupholstered myself, one sweltering summer weekend, and I served my famous lasagna, the recipe from my own mother, layered with sausage and 3 kinds of cheese. "This is adorable," Elena said, taking a delicate bite, her fork barely making a sound against my everyday plates. "So hearty. Really sticks to your ribs." Landon beamed, his face so open and hopeful, it made my throat tight. "Isn't Mum the best?" "The absolute best," Elena agreed, patting his hand with a proprietorial air. Later, when she was using the restroom, Landon leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "She's something right, Mom. Isn't she incredible?" "She is beautiful, honey," I said. And I meant it, and she seems very sure of herself. "That's what I love about her," he said, his eyes following the hallway where she had disappeared. "She knows what she wants. She has a plan for everything." Over the next few months, I saw what Eleanor wanted. She wanted Landon, certainly, but she also wanted to reshape him, to polish him into a fitting accessory for the life she had already scripted. His comfortable flannel shirts and broken-in jeans for casual Fridays were quietly replaced with slim-fit chinos and soft cotton polo shirts that somehow always looked new. His dream of starting his own boutique architectural firm, a dream we had sketched out on napkins over coffee for years, was now talked about in her presence as a maybe later when the time is right and we are more established. The time it seemed was right for following her father's blueprint for taking a secure, well-paid position at a large corporate firm where she said he could learn how things are really done. Her father was Robert Bradford, a name I came to know from the business section of the newspaper. Real estate development, commercial properties. There were pictures of him at galas, a tall man with silver hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes, old money or a very good facsimile of it. I met him and Eleanor's mother Cynthia at an engagement dinner at the Oakhaven Country Club, a place where the walls were lined with portraits of stern-looking men and the carpet was so thick it swallowed sound. A single mother, Robert said to me after the introductions, not as a question, but as a categorization. How admirable. He made it sound like a mildly interesting, slightly quaint hobby, like basket weaving. "We are just so thrilled Landon is joining our family," Cynthia said, her smile a thin, polished curve. "He is such a blank slate, and much potential to be guided to." The words settled in my stomach like cold stones. My son was not a blank slate. He was a vibrant, complex canvas I had spent 28 years carefully, lovingly painting. Every stroke mattered. Now they were talking about priming over him. When they announced the wedding would be at the Crystal Waters estate, I was not surprised. I had seen pictures. It looked like a palace built of glass and money set against a manicured lakeshore. When Elena gently, firmly declined my offer to contribute financially during a phone call, I felt the first real chill, a draft from a door I did not realize was closing. "Oh, Dora, that's so sweet of you to offer," she said, her voice like smoothed honey. "But Daddy is handling everything. He insists. It's really better this way. Less complicated for everyone. You just relax and enjoy being the mother of the groom." I wanted to say that love was not a complication, that sharing was not a burden, that I had been handling complicated things alone since I was 24, but I just swallowed and said, "Of course, whatever you need, just let me know." So I decided on a different gift. For years since Landon first started college, I had been quietly funneling money into a separate trust account in his name. It was not Bradford money, but it was substantial. A solid down payment for a stunning home in a good neighborhood, or enough seed money to launch his own firm without taking on crushing debt. It was my dream for him, my faith in his talent, wrapped up in the clean, solid columns of numbers I understood so well. I had the statements paper clipped together in a folder in my filing cabinet. I would give it to them at the wedding in a simple envelope. A surprise. A testament that my love, though quieter, less flashy, had deep and tangible roots. The planning of the wedding became a slow, meticulous process of my erasure. I was not invited to the dress tasting. The floral consultation was just for the bride, and her mother, the planner, explained in an email that used the word cohesive 3 times. I received a separate email from an assistant with a single link to a recommended dress for the mother of the groom. It was a shapeless sheath in a color called dove gray. It looked like a shadow, a smudge against the vibrant palette of their perfect day. When I wrote back asking about maybe a different style, perhaps in a soft blue, the reply was swift. The dove gray is selected to harmonize with the champagne and ivory theme. We kindly request adherence to the palette. I called Robert Bradford once, mustering all my grace, all the professional politeness I had learned in law offices. "Robert," I said, "I truly appreciate your generosity with the wedding. It is beyond kind. Please let me contribute something meaningful. The flowers, perhaps, or the music." His sigh was audible. a patient exhalation meant to convey he was dealing with a well-intentioned simpleton. Dora. We have a very specific vision for this event, a certain standard. My wife and daughter have it well in hand with the best vendors in the city. I assure you, your presence is the only contribution required. We will see you there. The word standard felt like a door clicking shut, locking me out. My contributions, my taste, my history were not up to standard. Landon became a ghost in my life. Busy, he would text. So much to do with the firm and the wedding plans. Can I call you tomorrow? Tomorrow would come and go. When we did talk, his voice sounded thin, stretched tight with a fatigue that was more than physical. He parroted Eleanor's phrases, her framing. It is what it is, Mom. They have certain expectations. You know how these things are. It's easier to just go along with it. Then came the wedding shower. It was held at the Bradford's Yacht Club, a sleek modern building of glass and steel jutting out over the water. I wore my best dress, a navy blue sheath I had owned for years, but still felt good in, and brought a gift I had spent weeks searching for, something I thought was thoughtful and timeless, an antique porcelain tea set I had found at a reputable estate sale. It was from the 1920s, elegant and delicate, with a pattern of lilies of the valley. I had it wrapped in silver paper with a simple white bow. The party was a sea of linen shift dresses and strategic pearls. I knew no one. The women talked about schools I had not heard of and resorts whose names were foreign to me. Elena held court on a white upholstered chair that looked like a throne opening gifts, with practiced exclamations. When she got to mine, she carefully peeled back the paper, lifted the sugar bowl. Oh, she trilled, her voice carrying. This is so delightfully vintage. It will be perfect for the garden shed. Maybe for potting seedlings or something. A little touch of whimsy. A light, tittering laugh rippled through the room like a chill breeze. Landon, standing proudly beside her chair, looked down at his polished loafers, his ears turning pink. He did not say my mother has great taste. He did not say that is a beautiful antique. He just stood there. Later, in the vast marble ladies' room that smelled of gardenias, I splashed cool water on my wrists. An older woman, one of Cynthia's sisters with the same sharp chin, stood next to me at the mirror, refreshing her lipstick. Your son is a lovely boy, she said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. It's good of Robert to take him under his wing. Some people, they just need that boost, you know, a little help fitting in. I could only nod my smile, feeling frozen on my face. I drove Landon home that night because he had had a glass of champagne. He was quiet, staring out the passenger window at the darkened city. You okay, honey? I finally asked, the words too loud in the quiet car. It's just a lot, Mom, he said, his voice flat. All of it. They are just different from us, you know, their world, their way of doing things. You have to try to understand. It's not personal. Different from us. The words hung in the dark air, conditioned space between us. They expanded, filling the car. I had spent a lifetime building a world for us, a world of hard work and quiet victories, of library books and home-cooked meals of love that showed up in actions, not announcements. And now in his eyes it was us who were different, less than, a project to be boosted. The week of the wedding, I went and bought the dove grey dress from the department store. It was as shapeless and sad as I feared. But that night, I opened my jewelry box and took out my mother's silk shawl, the one she had bought on a rare trip to Miami decades ago. It was a vibrant, swirling teal blue, the color of the Caribbean Sea under a noon sun. It was soft as a whisper. I draped it over the grey dress. It was my small, defiant act of rebellion, a whisper of color, of history, of the woman I came from and the woman I was. The wedding day dawned clear and cruelly bright, a perfect azure sky without a single cloud, as if even the weather obeyed their commands. Crystal Waters Estate was a postcard of pristine wealth. Manicured lawns rolled down to the glittering lake, white tents billowed like sails, and the air smelled of cut grass and expensive perfume. I parked my sensible sedan between a gleaming black Range Rover and a low-slung silver sports car, feeling a pang of self-consciousness about the faint layer of dust on my bumper. I was a grey moth, fluttering into a diamond display, hoping not to be noticed. A young man with a severe haircut and a clipboard intercepted me at the entrance. He checked my name, his finger sliding down a list. Right. Ah. He pointed with his pen. You will be at table 24. It is near the back to the left, just past the service entrance. I made my way through the gathering crowd, my clutch held tight. Table 24 was a small round table for 4 positioned squarely next to a draped hallway that clearly led to the kitchens. I could hear the faint clatter of dishes from behind the curtain. From my seat, I had a distant cinematic view of the top table, the sweetheart table for the bride and groom, and the long family table. Robert and Cynthia sat in the center, flanked by severe-looking relatives and a bishop. There was no empty seat waiting for me. My chest tightened a hard, familiar ache of exclusion, but I smoothed my mother's teal shawl over my shoulders, feeling the soft silk under my fingers. I would not let them see me wilt. I decided I needed to find Landon, to see my boy just for a moment before he walked down the aisle, to look into his eyes and give him my envelope, my secret, before the official whirlwind swallowed him whole. Navigating through the labyrinth of hallways, following the sounds of activity, I found my way to a quieter wing marked Private Suites. As I approached a door with a simple brass groom placard, I heard voices. Not the jovial back-slapping banter I expected, but sharp, clear, and tense. That shawl has to go, Landon. It is clashing violently with the champagne and ivory palette. She looks like she is walking in from some chaotic street festival, not a wedding. My mother is mortified. She spent months curating this aesthetic. That was Elena. Her voice was not raised, but it was ice, each word chipped and precise. Honey, come on. It's my mum. It's one piece of fabric. Just let it be, it's not worth this. That was Landon. His voice was not ice. It was tired putty yielding under pressure. No, this is our day. The photographers are everywhere. I cannot have her sitting there in every single shot, like a constant garish reminder of everything. She does not belong here, Landon. We are a different class. You get that right. My father will handle the rest later, but she needs to leave. Now. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It was not empty. It was full of my son's capitulation. The absence of his defense was a roar. It was the sound of my own heart cracking clean in two, a dry, sharp sound like a branch snapping in winter. I stood there frozen in the elegant hallway, the envelope with the trust details suddenly a lead weight in my clutch. The door opened abruptly. Elena stepped out already in her lace bridal robe, her makeup flawless, her hair in delicate rollers. She saw me. There was not a flicker of surprise, not a trace of shame or embarrassment, just a swift, cold calculation, a reassessment of tactics. Dora, I think we need to have a quick word. She guided me, her hand firm on my elbow, away from the door down the hall, not to a private room, but through a heavy side door that led to a secluded stone patio overlooking a koi pond. The sun was warm on my skin. Birds sang cheerfully in a nearby willow tree. The tranquility of the scene was obscene. Today is a very, very important day. She began, her voice smooth as polished glass, devoid of any real emotion. I feel that your presence with your particular style will be a distraction from the focus, which should be on Landon and me and our union. It would be better for everyone, yourself included, if you left. We will make sure you receive the professional photos and the video link later. You will not miss a thing. I looked at her. This child. This girl who thought class was something you bought off a shelf, who thought ancestry was a brand name. I looked back over my shoulder toward the solid door behind which my son waited in his silence. I nodded. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not call her the names that flashed like lightning in my mind. I simply nodded, polite and detached, as if she had just offered me a canapé I did not care for. I understand. I turned and walked. I did not look back. I walked through the opulent flower-filled lobby, past bustling staff in black vests, past early-arriving guests who glanced at me with vague curiosity. I pushed through the grand front doors. The bright afternoon sun hit my face full force. The beautiful teal shawl, my mother's shawl, now felt garish and foolish, a bright flag of my own naive hope. I clicked the fob for my car, the chirp sounding absurdly ordinary. I got in, closed the door, and the world went silent. The plush interior absorbed all sound. I placed my hands on the steering wheel, my plain gold wedding band glinting in the sun. I looked at my hands, the hands that had typed 1,000 legal briefs, that had held my son's small hand crossing streets, that had painted his bedroom ceiling blue, like the sky that had built a life from ashes and fear. I reached for my phone in the passenger seat. I did not call Landon. I did not call my sister or my best friend to weep and seek validation. I scrolled past all the familiar names, past the family contacts, past the friends, until I found the one I needed. Charles Whitman, First Metropolitan Bank, Senior Vice President, Wealth Management, my financial advisor and a friend for 20 years. The phone rang twice. Charles, Dora Wright here. Dora. His voice was warm, familiar. To what do I owe the pleasure? Big day today, isn't it? How is everything at the Crystal Waters? It was Charles, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, almost calm. Listen, I need you to do something for me right now. It is urgent. Of course. Anything. His tone shifted immediately to professional concern. I need you to close the Landon Wright Family Trust, account number 7439 Alpha Tango. Immediately. Liquidate all assets and transfer the full balance to my primary investment account, the Vanguard portfolio. And I need you to revoke all prior authorizations for Access Digital or otherwise. There was a long, profound pause. I could hear his breathing. Dora, that trust that's his future seed money, the one you have been building for a decade. Are you absolutely certain? Is everything all right? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Charles, I said, each word deliberate. The future has changed. The landscape is different. Please do it now, and I need you to email me the written confirmation the moment it is done. All right, Dora, I am on it. It will take me about 15 minutes to process from here. I will send the confirmation the second it clears. Thank you, Charles. I hung up. I sat in the quiet car, the air conditioner whispering. I thought about the trust, the overtime hours I had logged when Landon was little, him asleep on a pallet of blankets under my desk at the law office, the careful, nerve-wracking investments in tech stocks my colleagues thought were too risky, the nights I spent reading the Wall Street Journal and annual reports instead of watching television, the $285,000 and change that represented not just money, but time stolen from my own youth, love converted into security sacrifice, given tangible form. My phone chimed with a new email tone. I opened it. It was from Charles. The subject line read, "Confirmation of account closure and transfer." The body was formal with transaction IDs and final balances. The transfer was complete. The trust, as of that moment, no longer existed. I took a slow, deep breath, the kind you take after surfacing from deep water. Then I opened my web browser and Googled the main number for Crystal Waters estate. Crystal Waters. How may I direct your call? A polished female voice answered. The wedding coordinator, please. For the Wright Bradford event. One moment, please. A man's efficient voice came on the line. This is Martin, the event manager. How can I assist? Martin. This is Dora Wright, mother of the groom. I am calling to cancel a supplemental order for the reception. The case of vintage Dom Perignon champagne, the 2012, ordered beyond the standard bar package. It was placed on my personal credit card. Please cancel that order immediately. The hosts can serve the champagne that is included in their standard package. I could hear the confusion, the rustle of paper. But madam, that was a specific request from the bride. It is already here on ice. I am aware of the request, Martin, and I am cancelling it. The order number is on file under my name, Dora Wright. I am the card holder. Please process the cancellation and remove the charge from my card now. It will be done. I will need to have you speak to. The charge is to be removed. I repeated, my voice calm, but leaving no room for argument. Today. Thank you for your help. I placed the phone back on the passenger seat. I started the car. The engine purred to life, a humble, reliable sound. In my rearview mirror, the grand estate grew smaller and smaller, a shimmering dollhouse of aspirations that were never my own. Ahead of me, the long driveway curved toward the open road, the real world. Inside that palace of glass, the string quartet would be tuning their instruments, the guests taking their seats. The processional music was about to begin, and my quiet, devastating revolution was already complete. I drove home on pure autopilot, my mind a perfect numb blank. The streets were familiar, the turns habitual. The house when I entered was profoundly still. The silence had a different quality than before. It was not waiting to be filled, it was simply existing. I went straight to my bedroom. I took off the dove-grey dress, that expensive shadow, and folded it neatly, as if for storage. I took my mother's teal shawl and held it to my face for a moment, breathing in the faint, ghostly scent of her perfume that somehow still lingered after all these years. Then I folded it too, with great care, and placed it in the bottom drawer of my dresser, an artifact from a past life. I put on my softest sweatpants and an old university sweatshirt. I made a cup of chamomile tea, the ritual of boiling the water, steeping the bag, feeling the warm mug in my hands, grounding me. I sat at my kitchen table, in the spot where Landon and I had done homework, where we had eaten 1,000 meals. I did not cry. I felt a strange hollow peace, the peace that comes after a storm has passed and leveled everything. There was nothing left to fear because the worst had already happened. I turned off my phone and placed it in a kitchen drawer. I did not want the buzz, the glow, the intrusion of that other world. The next morning, with the sunlight streaming in, I felt a grim resolve. I opened the drawer and turned the phone back on. It erupted into a frantic vibrating fit. Missed call notifications piled up. Voicemail alerts blinked red. Text message previews crowded the screen, a cascade of anger and panic. I listened to them in order. Landon first, his voice a shattered mix of disbelief and rage. "Mom, what did you do? The trust account is empty. Elena is hysterical. The wedding planner just told us you cancelled the champagne. What is wrong with you? How could you ruin our day like this? You have no idea what you have done." Then Eleanor, a shrieking, furious voicemail that clipped in and out. "You vindictive, jealous woman. Do you have any idea what you have done? That money was Landon's. It was for our future. You have poisoned everything. I will never forgive you. Never." Then a number I did not recognize. A male commanding icy voice. "Robert Bradford. Dora. This is Robert. This action of yours is highly irregular and unacceptable. There will be consequences for this. Legal ones. You do not get to unilaterally dismantle what was intended for my daughter and your son. Call me back immediately." I felt a calm so deep, it was like sinking into a cool, still lake. I listened to them all, each message, etching the reality deeper. Then I poured another cup of tea, the steam rising in a gentle curl. I called Landon back. He answered on the first ring, his voice raw. "Mom, before you say another word," I said, my voice low and steady, a contrast to his chaos. "I want you to answer one question for me. Did you or did you not hear your fiancée, the woman you just married, say the words, 'We are a different class,' and then tell me to leave my son's wedding?" He sputtered, the anger momentarily derailed. It was a difficult situation. She was stressed. The pressure. You don't understand the pressure from her family, from the wedding, from everything. You are making it about you, and it is not about you. "I understand perfectly." I interrupted, my voice still calm. "I understand that you stood silent in that room. I understand that when she insulted your mother and dismissed my entire life, you chose her contempt over my dignity. That money, Landon, was mine. Every single dollar of it. It was a gift I was going to give you. A gift of love and belief. And you both threw it in my face long before I ever took it back. You made it clear it was not up to your new standard." "This is about more than money," he yelled, the sound cracking through the speaker. "You are absolutely right," I said, the numbness finally giving way to a clear, sharp sorrow. "It is about respect. It is about character. It is about the son I raised. and I do not know where he is right now. I hope he finds his way back." I hung up. I did not wait for his reply. The next call was to the number Robert Bradford had left. He answered with a curt Bradford. "Robert, it's Dora Wright." "Dora, explain yourself." "There is nothing to explain, Robert. Everything I did was legal and within my rights. The trust was established and controlled by me for my benefit until the moment of disbursement. I have simply decided not to disperse it. I have redispersed it. As for the champagne, I cancelled a supplemental order that was charged to my personal credit card. If you have any further questions regarding my legal or financial actions, you may contact my attorney, Janet Silver. I will text you her office number and email." "I will be doing just that," he said, the threat hanging in the air. "You do that, Robert," I said evenly. "Goodbye." I sent the contact information for my attorney, a sharp woman who had handled my will and estate planning. He never called back, and Janet later told me she received a single tersely worded email asking for clarification on the trust terms, to which she provided the relevant documents. That was the end of it. The silence that descended after those calls was heavy like a thick blanket. I realized with a final crushing certainty that I might have truly lost my son. Not to death, but to a choice he had made to a person he had become. That pain was a physical weight in my chest, heavier, more profound than any public humiliation. But beneath that weight was a terrible clarifying light. The boy I loved, the one with the kind eyes and the easy laugh, was buried under layers of someone else's expectations, suffocating under a mountain of debt and fear I had not even known about. I could not stay in the house. The walls seemed to press in every photo, every memento, a silent accusation. I went to my computer. I booked a one-way ticket to Charleston, South Carolina. My college roommate Maggie, a widow who lived in a colorful little house near the water, had been begging me to visit for years, saying I needed some southern sunshine. I needed air that did not taste like betrayal and failure. I packed a single suitcase with light clothing, a few books, my laptop. I watered my plants. I asked my neighbor to collect my mail. As I closed and locked my front door, it felt like I was closing the door on a museum dedicated to a life that was over, a life built for two, where now there was only one. Charleston was a sensory balm, a slow, gentle immersion in a different rhythm. Maggie asked no prying questions. She just hugged me tight at the airport, her familiar scent of lemon verbena and garden soil enveloping me, and said, "About time you got here. The guest room is ready." For the first week I did almost nothing. I sat on her screened-in porch with a glass of sweet iced tea and watched the geckos skitter up the walls. I walked for miles along the Battery, the salty Atlantic breeze tangling my hair, the rhythmic crash of the waves against the sea wall, a primitive soothing sound. I let the humid air and the dappled light under the live oaks sand down the sharp, jagged edges of my hurt. Maggie fed me shrimp and grits with a spicy tasso ham gravy, she crab soup, fried green tomatoes, food that was unpretentious, generous, and full of flavor. We talked about everything except my son and the wedding. We talked about her garden, about books we had read about, memories from our 20s, a time so distant it felt like another lifetime. She gave me space to be silent, which was the greatest gift of all. After a few weeks, the need to be useful to reconnect with the competent part of myself began to stir. I reached out to a local nonprofit that Maggie supported, an organization called Low Country First Steps that helped single mothers with financial literacy job training and childcare resources. I offered my services pro bono. They were thrilled to have someone with my background. I started doing remote consulting a few hours a day, helping them streamline their donation tracking, set up better budgeting templates, and plan a small investment fund for their long-term stability. It felt profoundly good to use my skills for something that mattered, to help women who were at the beginning of the hard, lonely road I had traveled so long ago. It gave my knowledge a purpose beyond my own survival. One afternoon, while I was reviewing a grant proposal on Maggie's porch, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number with a New York area code. Hi, Ms. Wright. This is Ben Miller. I was Landon's roommate at Cornell for 3 years. I know this is completely out of the blue and maybe inappropriate, but I need to talk to you about Landon. It's important. I'm worried about him. Is it okay if I call you? A cold knot formed in my stomach, different from the earlier pain. This was dread, laced with a desperate need to know. I typed back, "Yes, Ben, you may call. Now is fine." The phone rang almost immediately. "Hi, Dora. Thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I would not reach out like this. I know it's not my place, but I'm really worried about him, and I don't know who else to talk to." "It's all right, Ben. Tell me what's going on." He took a deep breath. His firm, the partnership he was in, it's in really bad shape. That big waterfront revitalization project in Brooklyn, they were the lead architects on. The primary developer went bankrupt. Totally ghosted. Landon and his partners are personally on the hook for a lot of the upfront costs. 6 figures easy, to keep the doors open and avoid lawsuits. Landon took a huge loan from Eleanor's father. And the terms are, I was at a guys' night a couple months ago, and Landon had too much to drink. He was talking about it. It sounded less like a loan and more like a silent partnership agreement. Robert Bradford basically has veto power over major clients and projects now. Landon is trapped. He looks terrible, Dora. Thin, jumpy. He's not himself. The fun, creative guy is just gone. I think the wedding, all of it, was partly him trying to keep his head above water. He thought marrying into that family, making Elena happy, was a life raft. But it feels more like an anchor. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the wicker chair. The pieces, the defensiveness, the exhaustion, the acquiescence to every demand clicked into a heartbreaking, coherent picture. It was not just greed or social climbing or being blinded by a pretty face. It was fear, financial terror. My proud, talented, independent son was drowning, and in his panic he had grabbed onto the first heaviest thing he could find, not realizing it was designed to pull him under and keep him there. "Thank you for telling me, Ben," I said, my voice thick. "I appreciate your loyalty to him and your courage in calling me. Are you going to help him?" Ben asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "Maybe now with you knowing." "No." "Ben," I said softly, the decision clear and firm in my mind. "I cannot. Not with money. He has to help himself. Throwing my money into that hole would not save him. It would just be another rope thrown to him, one from me this time. It would keep him from facing the bottom, from having to kick back up to the surface on his own power. He has to choose to swim to shore. He has to want to save himself more than he wants to be saved." We talked a few minutes more, and I thanked him again. I hung up my heart, aching with a new, more complicated pain. I was not just angry or wounded anymore. I was deeply, profoundly sad. For the bright-eyed boy who was scared, for the talented man who had compromised himself into a corner, for the love that had gotten twisted into a transaction. The anger towards him softened, replaced by a weary pity. The anger towards Elena and her father, however, burned cold and steady. That night I could not sleep. I went to Maggie's little writing desk and took out a sheet of her nice stationery. I did not write an email. This required the slowness of pen on paper. "Landon, I will always love you. That is the one true thing that remains." I miss the boy who was empathetic, who stood up for kids being picked on at the playground. I miss the young man who was brave enough to choose a difficult creative path. I miss the person who was honest, even when it was hard. When you find your way back to him, when you remember who you are beneath all the noise and the fear, my door is open. It will always be open. Until then, I wish you peace, the kind that comes from within, not from anyone else. Mom. I sealed it in an envelope, addressed it to his office, the only address I was sure was still his, bought a stamp from the post office, and dropped it in a blue mailbox on the corner the next morning. The act of letting it fall through the slot felt like releasing a bird I had been cupping in my hands. It was up to him now to fly or not. My part was done. Months passed. I returned home to my house, but it felt different. Not empty, but lighter. Cleared of a certain weight of expectation. I had my ongoing work with the nonprofit, which had turned into a formal part-time, remote position. I had reconnected with a few old friends from my paralegal days. I joined a community garden plot and spent my Saturday mornings with my hands in the dirt, growing tomatoes and zucchini, something I never had time for before. One unremarkable Tuesday afternoon in early fall, a delivery truck pulled up. The doorbell rang. I signed for a long white box. Inside, nestled in green tissue paper, was a lavish bouquet of sunflowers, their faces as big as saucers, brilliant yellow and brown. They were my favorite flower from my youth, from the patch I used to grow by the driveway of my first apartment. There was no card, no name, just the flowers. I put them in a simple glass vase filled with water and set them on my kitchen table. Their bright, hopeful faces turned toward the afternoon sun streaming in the window. I smiled a small, sad, complicated smile. I did not know if it was an apology, a peace feeler, or just a random gesture from someone else. I decided it did not matter. I would enjoy their bold beauty for what it was. I often found myself thinking about Eleanor's words, spoken with such cold conviction. We are a different class. She was right, but not in the way she meant. Not in the way I had allowed myself to believe in that moment of supreme humiliation. Class is not a bank statement or a zip code. It is not a wedding venue booked a year in advance, or a bottle of champagne so expensive you are afraid to drink it. It is not a name that opens doors or a wardrobe devoid of color. Real class, the kind that endures, is integrity. It is the courage to speak up for someone you love, even when it is costly, even when it is inconvenient. It is the quiet dignity that comes from knowing your own worth, a worth that cannot be bestowed by a family name or stripped away by a snub. It is the strength to be yourself unapologetically in a room where you know you do not fit the decor. It is grace under pressure. It is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. The Bradfords, with all their vaults of money and their obsessive standards, were paupers in the currency that mattered most. And I, in my quiet, paid-off bungalow with my second-hand furniture and my garden-fresh tomatoes, was richer than I had ever allowed myself to believe. I learned a hard lesson about love too. A mother's love is unconditional, but that does not mean it is a doormat. It does not mean it must silently absorb poison. Sometimes the most loving, the most difficult thing you can do is to step back, to let someone you cherish face the full, unsoftened consequences of their choices, to stop trying to save them from the very lessons that might in the end save their soul. Enabling is not love. It is a slower, kinder seeming form of destruction. I do not know if my son will ever find his way back to himself or back to me. That is a story he has to write, a path he has to choose to walk. My story, the one I am responsible for, is my own, and I am finally writing it for an audience of one. My phone sits quietly on the table next to the sunflowers. The late afternoon sun slants through the window, painting my living room walls in warm shades of gold and amber. I am Dora, 54 years old. I come from a class of one, a class built on resilience, forged in solitude, on quiet strength, honed by necessity, and on a love that has learned finally when to hold on and when to let go with grace. And that, my friends, is a fortune no one can ever seize, diminish, or cancel. It is mine. If this story of quiet strength and painful choices resonated with you, I would be so honored if you shared your own thoughts in the comments below. What does the word class mean to you in your own life? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? How did you navigate it? Let us have a conversation and learn from each other's journeys. If you felt this was a story worth hearing, a reminder that our value is not for others to appraise, please give this video a like. It truly helps others find these important conversations. And if you want to join me for more stories about navigating the complex terrain of family heartache and ultimately finding our own footing, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear this message of quiet strength today. Thank you for listening, for being part of this compassionate community, and for remembering that your worth is an inside job never determined by someone else's measuring stick. Take good care of yourselves and your own precious hearts. I will see you next time.